5 minutes. We all had 20 minutes.
Oh, really? I thought they were joking. So. Our part's not that hard though, right?
Testing. Can you hear me in that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Mark Ferreri. I'm the Supervisor of Humanities here at RHS. And on behalf of our learning community today, we're honored to host our final of 5 Making a Difference speaker presentations today. The timing and the subject of this final installment of our inaugural year is telling, as today represents both Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's also the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Additionally, Rwanda hosted the International Holocaust Remembrance Day this past January. Speaking at that event, Israel's ambassador to Rwanda said, quote, "We must unite in dismay at the way in which so many restrict of their humanity, and we must work together to educate people and show them the barrenness of their prejudices, to create a world in which there is no need for maliciousness." Our Making a Difference program was largely constructed for such a noble purpose. I'd like to, first and foremost, thank the Ridgewood Backwoods Association, who generously supported this first Making a Difference program. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Fishbein, Dr. Gorman, and most especially Lisa Weotter, a teacher, an English teacher here at RHS, whose tireless organizational efforts really made this lecture series come to life. Today's presentation will be provided by Ms. Eugenie Mukshimana. She's the founder and executive director of the Genocide Survivors Support Network. It's a charitable organization with the mission to help genocide survivors rebuild their lives and use their voice to contribute to genocide prevention through education and public advocacy. Today, she's graciously agreed to share the story of her own family's tremendous ordeal against the Hutu majority government, which, in a very short period of time, slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Tutsi and moderate Hutu victims. After moving to the United States in 2001 and earning a degree in social work, Eugenie served as an employment specialist for individuals with a wide range of disabilities, and then as a case manager for homeless families in Essex County. She is a regular lecturer in special programs at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York City, and she's a frequent panelist on issues of genocide and other human rights violations. She's a recipient of the 2012 Columbia University Human Rights Advocate Program Fellowship, and she made the trip today from her home in Baltimore, Maryland. So please provide a warm welcome to Ms. Eugenie Mukshimana.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this amazing program. And I'm saying this because I travel to many schools around the country, and they're rarely you will see high school programs like this one. So I'm very, very happy to be here. Although I wish we were talking about something much more uplifting, fun, but genocide is real, and that's why we also have to talk about it. What I'm going to try to do today is to really give you a little bit more than the book will give you, and I hope that at the end of the presentation, we can have a conversation. I know it is tough sometimes to ask questions because this is a large room, and you're not in the comfort of your own classroom. But I really want to hear what you have to say, the questions you have, whether it is personal questions, questions that pertains basically to my personal life. You can ask questions about my family, you can ask questions about Rwanda, you can ask questions basically about anything. So there's enough such thing as not so good question. Every question is valuable. And I hope that we can have the conversation. So I'm going to be your teacher for the next 2 hours. I understand we have a break, and after the break we will continue. So this is a personal story, but the country where I come from, there is almost no such thing as a personal story. Our stories are always part of a larger story, a family story, of the entire community story. So you will hear about my story, but it's also about other things that the area I grew up in and everything that was happening. And I thought that would basically give you a better understanding of what took place and why it is very important to pay attention to every single thing that we talk about in this presentation. So I know you know where Rwanda is because you have to read some materials and hopefully you looked at the map. But when I'm pointing out this map, is sometimes it's a very tiny, small country, and people really didn't know anything about Rwanda until we had the genocide. There wasn't much happening there. But Rwanda is a wonderful country. Like many countries before, they all kind of descend into some kind of tragedies that sometimes we get to know them about. But it's a very small country. We all speak one language in the country. It's called Kinyarwanda. And people generally just identify themselves as Rwandese because it's really small. And I grew up, if you can read where Kigali is, and a little bit underneath is a place called Gitarama, and that's basically where I grew up. I did not grow up in the city. So just a few things about Rwanda I thought you might want to know. One of the arguments that people make about the genocide is that there were way too many people, and because there were so many people inside the country, that caused the conflict, and the people wanted to eliminate others, just basically land competition. That may be partially true. We will go over that later on. Japan is highly populated in the city. New York City, there's so many people, there's no genocide there. So the fact that there are so many people around, it doesn't necessarily, is not just one convincing argument that people will necessarily have conflict. The other thing that is interesting about Rwanda, and this happened right after the genocide did change the country, obviously, and one of the changes that happened was that the gender issues, kind of the gender dynamics changed drastically, partially because the men mostly participated in the genocide, and after the genocide, either they fled or they were in prison. So you have a disproportionate number of women and men in the country, and women ended up stepping up to the table and kind of like doing the work that men have been traditionally doing, and that sort of gave us an entry into the changes that we see in the gender dynamics in Rwanda. So we have the highest number of women representatives in the government in the world. So the gender equality in some ways, there is one thing that we kind of achieved, and it happened because out of necessity, I would say. The other thing that is interesting, and I was actually reading this morning, that Rwanda is now considered like the third world, they were environmental, or kind of like a green country. Rwanda is number 3 now. Just I saw this morning. And one of those things that happened is, again, Rwanda is kind of like a different place. They came up with a whole bunch of environmental friendly, policies that change the way people live. And one of those policies, if you ever travel to Rwanda, one thing that you should never pack is a plastic bag. Don't we search for them at the airport? You're not going to be allowed to bring in any plastic bag. And I know when I go to the grocery store and they double pack, the the double bag pretty much my toilet paper. I never quite understood that, but I'm mindful that at least, I know these things are possible. It's just requires a little bit more work. Another thing that sometimes when you read and you learn about world issues and world history and such, especially for contemporary history, after the UN was put in place and you have obviously conflicts erupting here and there, is the whole idea of peacekeeping missions. As you might have read before, we had a peacekeeping mission in Rwanda before the genocide. And then they pulled them out, but they tried to put them back again, but the bureaucracy that goes into making that happen, convincing one nation to provide soldiers, it's really hard. And so Rwanda has been, after the genocide, engaged in participation of this, providing troops for other countries. I know they were in Sudan, they were in East African, Central African Republic. I know they have been in Haiti and some other places. And it's something that we learn from our own experience of what abandonment means, basically. Anyone interested in geography, when you go to Rwanda, you can actually go to the source of the Nile River. There is a nice park there, natural forest, and you can go and see it. One of the other interesting about Rwanda today is that, because of the economy, in Rwanda today is actually based on tourism. And one of the reasons why people come to Rwanda is because of the mountain gorillas, which are endangered species. I have some pictures I will show you later on. But that's one of the reasons why people go. So as much as we're doing environmental policies in Rwanda, there is an understanding that protection of the species and basically trying to see the whole country in a way, anything that they can be protected in the country in addition to human lives, also the environment and everything that lives on that land now is protected. The weather, I always have to talk about the weather. Just because I was so surprised when I first came to the US, there's one thing that I never considered in making the choice for my school, and that is the weather. Because in Rwanda, you don't have to think about the weather. It's always summer time in Rwanda, from January to December. So you can wear your summer clothes all year round, no problem. There's no snow, there's nothing. And you don't have humidity because it's on a very high elevation. So it's really very nice weather. And the last thing was just we got colonized by Germans and then the Belgians. They all had a different approach to colonial policies for that. But, I'm sure there are more facts, but that's pretty much the basic. Now, that's what Rwanda looks like. And I want you to keep in mind that, those beautiful hills that you see, they didn't have an impact during the genocide on ways in which people could be protected or not be protected. So if you can imagine, if you're at the top of a hill, you have a whole view of what is happening down in the valley, right? So try to imagine someone trying to hide, finding a place to hide. So, as beautiful as they look to be on the picture, I also know that, there's always, some people look at them and they wish we have lived on a very flat land. Maybe more people will have survived. But that's part of life. The other thing you can see in this picture now is that the land is completely used, like every square inch of this country is used. And right now it looks, you don't have trees, but they have, this is an old photo, but they have started programs to kind of replenish the forest and everything. So it looks different today than it's looking now in that picture. This one is a little bit different. It's just a kind of like a caption of daily life people just walking around and going about their businesses. And one thing I also want you to see is that, I don't know if you can see, there are 3, 4 houses. And that's kind of like how families lived during the genocide. And most of those families would be related. So if you imagine when the attack came, it's very easy to attack a family that lives in close proximity like this. So again, not all of them may not be related, may not be Tutsis, but this is typical. That house up there could have been a Hutu family, and those houses down could have been Tutsi families, and they know each other because they're really pretty much living that close to each other. So, because the crimes, again, were committed by your next door neighbor, you can try to imagine how hard it was to see that trust that people had being kind of like taken apart. But also, I want you to realize that because we have those hills, there is no water on the top of the hill, so the only access to water people would have would be somewhere down in the valley, right? And everybody who lives on the hill would have to go fetch water down in the valley. And the reason why I'm bringing up this to you is because when you try to imagine life after the genocide, everyone will still need to go to fetch water down there at the valley. So basically, nobody can survive without collaboration with other people. That's just another picture. As I mentioned earlier, the economy is based on tourism, so I'm just going to show you a few pictures. So those are the mountain gorillas I was talking about. One of the close depictions that I have seen of them is actually in the movie King Kong. Some of the moves and everything, they had to go to Rwanda to kind of like study that. And the woman who spearheaded actually the program studying the gorillas, and she was an American woman who was murdered right before the genocide, but she had dedicated her life to study these animals. They're very close to human beings. See, they're holding their babies. Here's another one. We also have a few other animals around. These guys too, and this one. Now, okay, so everything has a story pretty much. So as you can see on that picture, you can see the scars of war. Look at the windows. Look at the roof. You can tell there's something happened at that house. The house itself is located in a kind of like a national park in the northeastern part of Rwanda. And the story about this elephant was that this elephant survived the war as well. And he used to know the people who lived in his home. And when the war came, the people who lived there first were killed. And the elephant, after the war fled, was actually badly wounded. After the war, the elephant came coming back, somehow maybe expecting to find the people. And because he came coming back, so the people there started kind of having a relationship with the elephant again, and that's why it was there. And in one small way, when we think of conflict, we have to imagine conflict almost as a tsunami. Anything in its path is going to be affected. So in all these places, sometimes I hear, well, I have different interests, like, I'm an environmentalist, or, I'm pretty much, there are people who are activists because they're saying, well, we have to figure out a way to live together. But it doesn't matter what your interest is, in a way, you always have to remember that a conflict is pretty much almost like a tsunami. Anything that you care about, you're interested in, if it is in the path, is going to be interesting. And that's why we, making peace and finding peace requires a collective force, because everybody's interests are pretty much at stake. Now, these are the cows we have in Rwanda. They're completely different. They look different from the cows you used to see. The reason why I'm showing you this picture is that the cow is something very significant in the history of Rwanda. A cow was almost like a currency in some ways. A cow was a sign of wealth. You know, somebody's wealth historically was measured in terms of the number of cows they owned, right? And the cows were used, as dowry. If you getting married and your family would have to pay, an X number of cows to the bride's family, and the cow is something, gift that the family would give to another. It was very significant, and it's also in a way in addition to playing that social classification role, if I may use the term, the cow became something that later on the Belgians used to define people in the country. So, although people sometimes they will say, somebody's wealthy, but they still Rwandans. They didn't think of themselves as just Hutus or Tutsis and such. But that later on got changed, and I will tell you how the cow had something to do with it. But also like people, and then this is a side story. You know how here you have dogs and they have names, and you give them names, and somehow, the names have meanings, you pet them. We do the same with cows in Rwanda. Cows have attitude, they get nicknames and all kinds of stuff. So we love our cows. I just love those. I have one there. Now, so in Rwanda, when you're reading, of course you read about the Hutus and Tutsis, and then there's that small other group called the Batwa. So when I was growing up, of course this has now changed again, but I was growing up, everyone got that ID card. I got mine when I was 16. And I remember, I don't remember anybody asking me for my ethnicity, but if you look at that ID card, so you have the picture, the first line underneath your picture is your ethnicity. So that woman is clearly a Tutsi because they crossed out Hutu, they crossed out Twa, they crossed out Negroes. And there is also where the woman lives, what she does, and the children she has. Now, this ID card here, during the genocide, will kill you or save you, depending on what that first line underneath your picture says. If you're a Tutsi, that's it. There is no discussion or anything. If you're a Hutu and they look at the picture and they kind of think they don't trust you, you have to maybe find that other people can say, confirm that you're Hutu. But primarily, that's one of the things they first checked during the genocide was, what is your ID card? And many people just have to throw them away because of a death sentence. And if I can refresh your memory going back to the Holocaust, you remember the passport? What was stamped in the passport? Yeah, it's that. And then something was J. So those things do matter when we put on identification documents. So again, so we have the Hutus. So how do people become Hutus or Tutsis and Twa, you may ask? A short history lesson is that actually these were not ethnic groups. Long time ago, they were just social classes. And you could become you were a Tutsi just because you have so many cows. That's it. If you lose them because you happen to have more sons than daughters, so you're gonna give away more cows, you go below whatever the number was, sorry, you're a Hutu. And if you get them when you were a Hutu, you can become a Tutsi. So there was social mobility was possible. But then when the Belgians came to the country later on in the early 1920s, they did not understand this whole story. They didn't bother to ask who are the Hutus and Tutsis and whatnot. They just decided, well, we're going to introduce an ID card. And the way you're going to know who's a Tutsi, this is the number of cows. And that's it. Once you put that information in the ID card that I said earlier, it is permanent now. And then of course they defined the Tutsis, and somehow maybe they were told they had cows, they were told they had thin, long noses, But really, let's think about it for a second. How many of you in this room have siblings and you have completely different hair color? Raise your hand. Right. Does it take away the fact that you're siblings? Is it possible that you could be related, to someone and you look completely different? They are tall, you short. So what were these version people thinking? So those are things you have when you read history or you have to think about these things. You have to place them on a timeline and kind of try to imagine. If I were to go to the Amazon today, how much can I claim I know about the people who live there? How long is it going to take me to fully understand the culture so I can write about them and make all these scientific sort of discoveries? But you also have to place that in context. In 1920s or 1930s, when they were coming up with these theories in Rwanda, trying to map out who is who, what was happening in Europe? Ethnography studies. And those people were doing this, they were coming from Europe as well. So as much as Rwanda is a case down here in Africa, but you can see how these histories are related. And that's how I want you to think about things that we read about. You always have to place them in much larger context as well to see what you get. Now, this guy, according to the Belgians, is a typical Hutu because they look at his nose. He's not very tall. Actually, you may not know this man. His real name is Balusola, and he is now was sentenced to life imprisonment because he is the man who prepared and coordinated the genocide in Rwanda. Have you ever heard of this name before? Yeah, exactly. So some of the things that we need to do in history sometimes is that it's important to have the names, because when somebody said Hitler, you know who the person is. Otherwise, when we lose those names, we can't really place, we can't really say. It's almost like the genocide created itself. And there is a brain behind this genocide. So that was his. Now, do you know who this guy is? This guy's name is Paul Kagame. He's the current president of Rwanda. And according to the Belgian, just looking at the shape of his nose, he's a Tutsi. And that's what his ID card will say. Really, they're no different, they're all men. Read same way, speak the same language, eat the same food. Basically, there's nothing that is different except that label they gave to them, which meant that if he were in Rwanda during the genocide, he would have been killed. Now, here's another group. Sometimes they call them pygmies. So when you read about history, you're not going to find much about, they're not mentioned that much. They call them pygmies. When I looked up the word pygmies and and what the really definition was, I was surprised because when I was growing up, there were a group they called the Batwa in my village. They were just people like us, but historically, both the Hutus and Tutsis have been discriminating against them. Now, all these three groups lived in the country together as a unit. And the reason why historically there's no conflict between the Hutus and Tutsis and the Twa is this. It's because each one of this group was valuable to the rest of the group. See, the Tutsis, I mentioned to you that they had cows. Many, many cows. And you know what? They were vegetarian. They didn't grow any food. How do you think they got the food? They had to trade with people who were growing food. And those people who were growing food, they needed butter, they needed the ham, and they needed everything as well. And they need their sons will get married, they will need cows. So that's why they will have to trade with these Tutsis so they can all get what they want. And then the Batwa, none of those two groups knew anything about art and craft and anything. So this Batwa made every single tool that these two other groups used, whether it's for agriculture, whether it is for cows and whatever. They did that, and they were great entertainers. So everyone had a role to play. That was equally important. That's why there were no conflict. And the only way you can get conflict between these people is to divide them on things that really don't matter, like the shape of somebody's nose, and all kinds of other stuff. Now, basically what the Rwanda that I was describing about the Hutus and Tutsis living in harmony and in peace together, that was way back then before, let's say, 1940s, 1950s. And so the way the community was organized, you had a king, picture here. When I say king, you don't think about the Queen of England and all these other kingdoms or Saudi Arabia. These people were not rich, not at all. It wasn't about the wealth. They didn't have any property they owned. It's really almost like a prestige job. They were not paid. They ate the same food everybody ate. There wasn't anything beyond that. I don't know that much about that hairstyle, but that person looked like a king to you. This is 1934, and this guy in a kind of like a striped kind of outfit there, that's a king and that's a queen. You see their feet? Yeah, they're barefoot. They didn't even have shoes. And that's what I'm saying, like the kingdom itself wasn't about the wealth or anything. So you had this administration, but people who led the country were not rich, so people would not fight because it wasn't really economically, it wasn't anything to fight about. And they didn't consider themselves poor, by the way. They felt they were kings and queens and they were really well off because everything was just relative to what they had been. And that's the replica of the house they lived in. 1934. Now, yes, that's the house. What you're seeing here is another picture of why there were no conflicts between the Hutus and Tutsis in the history. See, people will always have issues. Your neighbors' cows somehow destroy their crop, and you try to mediate this, and we might have heard about something called gachacha, which is a community court system where your peers pretty much kind of like a tribe are, the judges. And they're selected in a way that they're men of integrity, they're not, they're not partial, they're really supposed to hear the case and give the best kind of like a verdict. It can come to that. And that whole court, thing was also about reconciling the people who brought the case in front of them. Because the punishment will be usually, you're gonna pay X amount of beer. And who's gonna drink the beer? Those guys and their families. They're gonna celebrate after the court, thing is done. So the community always resolve the issues before they get too far. But sometimes, occasionally, people will not be happy. They could go all the way up to the king. What those two guys are doing, they're arguing a case in front of the king. So, which means that, and you can see it's not just a king who is there, he also had a whole bunch of people who will hear the case. You could take this and think of the Supreme Court, and anything that is said there, that's it. If you're wrong, and you're gonna pay whatever the punishment you asked to pay. But this is why you don't have profit in the communities, because there was a system in place to resolve those conflicts. Now, after the genocide, we brought back the system because it had worked in the past. And pretty much it's kind of, it worked for the community that benefit to it, but also I recognize personally that there are, it is just good, was good for that time period, and for those kind of cases, maybe it's not really appropriate for trying people who have murdered their neighbors. But that's just my opinion. Now, as I said, I grew up in Rwanda in the time period where the country was still poor. Not to that 1934, but not that far distant anyway. We didn't have an ambulance when we were growing up. That's what they would do to carry the person who is sick to the hospital. You need at least maybe 4 people, minimum 4 people, to carry a sick person to the hospital. Now, a family may not have those 4 people. What happened is that for everyone who lived in this country, you had to have a relationship with your neighbors. Really good relationship, because you're gonna need them. You're gonna need them to carry somebody who's sick to a very far away to a hospital. So people knew that it was important to invest in relationship. And that's what puzzles me sometimes when I look back, I'm like, how did we get the genocide in this society that seemed so perfect, where people recognize that we need each other? How do we become now a society where discrimination and genocide and all of these things, bad things that we know of, happen? Now you see, as a kid growing up, this is what you play with. There are no PlayStation or all kinds of other stuff we have in the basement. Recycling too. You have to have that plastic can, whatever jerry can, used and overused to the point where your parents will just say, well, you can play with this. Otherwise, if you dare to do anything with it and they think there is still use to it, you're gonna get in trouble. This is another way that kids will just keep themselves entertained. And this kid think he has a really good thing or whatever. That is from a like a jerry can or something that when you twist open, like you remember the milk gallon. There's a little piece, plastic piece. Oh, that's for like a bigger size of containers. But those things really were, valuable to the kids. I remember in my classroom, one of the kids traded just one piece of those red things to a notebook. But that's how simple life was for all these kids who grew up at some point being pushed and ended up committing genocide. These are the faces of kids who murdered, who grew up and they later on became martyrs, and the kids who later on became victims. But life was just like this for every child, except for a few privileged ones. This is what a typical classroom was. You didn't have your own desk or anything. You're lucky enough if you have a desk, a bench to sit on. But try to learn in that environment. This is an upgrade from that other class. 3 or 4. And then you have that, it's almost another upgrade now for the buildings. Now, as you know, a genocide doesn't happen in a vacuum. All that nice, wonderful society that I was talking about, we all grew up, and the world changed. And what changed is really not people that changed. There are some people that had every interest in changing that society that we just looked at. They changed it by studying enough, telling people how different they were. That their neighbors are not good enough. They are not trustworthy. They are cockroaches. They are snakes. Cockroaches. When I was in high school right before the genocide happened, and I remember being called a cockroach by soldiers. So I happened to go to a high school in the city of Kigali, and the high school I attended was one of the good high schools. They were all public high schools. And I went to school actually with many of the kids whose parents ended up planning and carrying out the genocide. They were either in the army or they were big government officials. The guy who became the interim president during the genocide, I went to school with his two daughters, and one of them, like in those days we saw, one of them, she was actually, I sat next to her for like a whole year in my class. They were normal kids, good kids. But as we go to school and all this propaganda is happening, they didn't turn, to us and say, oh, you were cockroaches. We had a good relationship with them, but their parents were doing something very different behind the desk somewhere in the office. Now, a genocide is prepared, and one of the things as you read about is propaganda. Propaganda works. Or at least they seem to work when they are, calling for all bad, negative things. I wish to see one day when a propaganda for something really good happens and people kind of embrace and really put in as much effort as these guys put in during the genocide, or even during the Holocaust. Before the Holocaust. How do you get an entire country to kind of change completely the way they think or they see their fellow citizens to you are a snake, you are a rat, you are the devil, you are this and that, and people buy that. But when you think about it, it's very simple. What happens in the school when there is a rumor? How does it happen? It takes one person to say, something, and that person knows it's not true, right? And if nobody says while you're lying, and the other people keep repeating or just ignoring it, what happens at the end of the semester? Is it still a rumor or is it somehow true? Yes, a rumor will turn into the truth if nobody calls it for what it is, that is a rumor, it's not true. And we know this because it happens in every school that I know of. Maybe not inside a classroom, but even outside, but we know that things like that do happen. But when you pick them you put them in a bigger picture and you have a government official or someone that an elected official, somebody who has an authority, and start saying something that is not true in a very convincing tone. And by the way, in a society like Rwanda, when very few people had a chance to go to school, if someone is a lawyer, if somebody is a teacher, if somebody is like a government civil servant, what they say is considered the truth just because they have that level of education. So the average person is going to listen to that person and is not going to challenge what they say. Because they think they're more educated, they're brighter than them, and therefore they know more than they do. So for the propaganda was made by intellectual people, educated people. When they start saying that the Tutsis were cockroaches, first of all, I didn't really think of it when I was called a cockroach. I didn't think about it. But now when I think about it, I'm really angry. Of all the animals on the planet, why do you call me a roach? Really? In the beginning, it really sounds like really simple, but let's do this. If you see a roach in your kitchen, or if you saw one, give me a couple of words that will come to your mind. Killing, the other one? You, yes. Gross, another one? Yeah. So does it matter how big or how young the roach is? If it's a tiny little baby roach, would you feel different? Yes? No? Yeah, so think about it. If you call a human a roach, what are you really calling for? What do we call the people who come to take care of roach infestation? And by the way, it's called infestation. It's not an attack, it's an infestation. What do we call them, those people? Exterminators. And we are just thinking of them coming to clean completely, and there is no baby roach, there's no egg, there's nothing. So try to think of a propaganda that is calling people a roach. What were they really saying? Extermination. I just didn't get it. I was in high school. I was interested in boys and all other stuff that, everyone in my age would have been interested in. I didn't get it. I didn't get it. Some people got it, and they started calling the propaganda what it was, that it was propaganda. But propaganda had taken another term in the Rwandan society. Propaganda, when I was growing up, was something, if you said something and say, oh, that's propaganda, it only meant something that cannot be materialized. It was another way to dismiss it, saying that's a lie. You're bluffing. But it worked because they said it over and over and over. And some of this propaganda can be found in that print media called Crown Ground. It had cartoonists and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stories, and people read it. I read it. I actually been to their office. It was entertaining to read these things because we thought they were the most ridiculous, stories. Who says this kind of stuff? But they said it over and over and over, and some people really started thinking it was true. Now, there was also a radio station that was put in place exactly for propaganda reasons. I listened to it, very entertaining, but very provocative as well. And, we listened to it because the national radio station was boring. And so we heard all this propaganda, but again, in my mind, they weren't really talking about us. It was almost like pure entertainment, almost kind of like a Jerry Springer show, whatever, something of that nature. And then you have hate speeches in the public. Now, as I said earlier, if somebody is educated, than most people, so people will perceive those individuals to be very, very, intellectual, and they will listen to what they say, and they will think it's true. So when you have the propaganda being embraced and pushed forward by the people who are in the administration, who are in the army, who are, the most successful people in the country, eventually the mass population started consuming propaganda as the truth. And there is how the genocide, the whole idea of the genocide came to be. They convinced people that propaganda was true. And they brought in every arsenal they could find. The radio was important because that's the only way people communicate. That's how you know what is happening in the city when you live down in those villages that I showed you. The print media was only limited to the city. So not so many people knew how to read or could afford to buy one. But the radio station, everybody got this shortwave radio station, and they're listening every single day. Also, by the way, once the genocide started, the print media was not there, but that radio station was there. And it shifted to entertaining now the guys who are carrying out the killing. It shifted to pointing out, hideout for people, calling the names of specific individuals. They will go on the air and say, this family from this community, their name is so and so. They just left the house. They're driving a red car. They have 3 kids in it, but we know they have 5. You have to find the 2 other kids. If somebody, that's almost like an Amber Alert. Think about how safe is that family going to be once their name is called on that radio station. And they will just say, there's a prize for whoever's going to find them. So that will get whoever that was really not so into killing that particular morning to kind of think, oh, sure, yeah. Kind of the people who buy lottery tickets when they say, well, it's a mega million of 800, whatever. I know that's why I buy one, but I'm not a regular person. So once you attach a price to this, you're calling in more and more people. And for the genocide the more people prepared it, of course, it's the document is read about, but all the other things that the ingredients were put in place. It was ready to go. The only thing they needed was to have the death of the president being the issue. And then with that, the whole thing started. Is this a good place to take it?
Yeah, this would be a good place. We're going to give you 5 minutes. You can get up and stretch your legs. If you need to go to the bathroom, the rest of you can do that. And we're back here in 5 minutes.